welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today because today we are going to be working on another creature that I've created. So lately I've been really into creature design and coming up with my own species. The last one that I did that was really custom was my poison dart glider wyvern, and today I'm going to be making a painted tusk dragon. Anyways, let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to start on the clay first, and the very first piece of clay that I need to work on are the pair of tusks. So I have a pretty simple wire frame for each one. It's a little bit reinforced because I'm not going to be using any resin to glaze over these. I'm going to try and avoid doing that, and I wanted to make sure the wire frame inside was a little bit sturdier than normal. So I'm going to get this completely covered in clay. Now what I did differently with the clay was I added a tiny bit of black acrylic to it. I mixed it up until everything looked a very nice uniform gray, and then I started adding it to the wireframe. Now I did test this with a pre-bake of a small piece of clay to make sure that adding the acrylic didn't mess up the baking, and it seems to work just fine. I would just recommend to not add a ton. A little goes a long way. And then after I have everything completely covered in clay and I've laid out all the details that I want to, I left it pretty simple. I did rough up the texture quite a bit, but what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take more black paint, I'm going to water it down, and I'm going to paint over our clay before we bake it. So I'm just trying something new to see if I can keep more like tacky type clay. I don't want to have everything always glossed. So I'm going to go over everything, trying to get the black to settle in all the cracks, and I'm going to let that dry. I also added a tiny bit of gold at the base to kind of yellow the tusk to make it look a little bit more natural. And then I'm going to put both tusks in the oven to bake for about 45 minutes at 275 Fahrenheit. And now that we have our tusk done, we can start working on sculpting the face. So I have my lump of tinfoil, and I'm going to start covering it in a thin layer of clay, blend everything together, and start getting a basic shape down so we can figure out where the tusks and all the other details need to go on the face. So I have these really pretty glass eyes that I want to use, and I know with the design that you're not going to see them too much, but I still wanted to use them because they're going to go with all the different colors that I'm going to have in the body. So pretty much the tusks are going to be too large for you to really see the eyes completely from the side. You'll mainly see them from the front. And the whole reason for this is kind of the little backstory that I created for our dragon. So basically my idea for our painted tusk dragon is he is a species of dragon that is so large and has no natural predators that he's evolved to where he doesn't really need his sight on the sides of his body. So he only sees in the front. His large tusks, which are designed for fighting off other males and for attracting mates, pretty much grew to the point where they block out his side vision. Actually, most of the painted tusk dragon males' features are designed for attracting mates or competing with other males. There really isn't anything to them for defending themselves. That's why they really don't need their side vision or anything like that. If they're going to be fighting something, it's going to be right in front of them. Now you'll notice that I'm not finishing off sculpting the face with the tusks in place. I am going to be adding them later after we get everything painted and stuff. And the main reason for this is I want to have a more secure hold on them instead of just sculpting the clay and adding them this way. I want to actually resin them in place so that they are just really there and I don't have to worry about them falling out. So I'm gonna get our clay head baked, and I'm gonna do basically the same temperature and time that I did the tusks, 275 Fahrenheit, for about 45 to 55 minutes. Now you're probably wondering, where are all our other clay pieces? And that's actually just it. We're not going to be doing any other clay pieces. I do have some claws for the feet and the wings, but these are going to be casted out of resin from some molds that I made quite a while ago. Anyways, our clay head is done baking and we can start working on the painting. So for the color, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to be painting the bottom portion of his head blue and the top portion of his head red. So the underbelly of him is going to mainly be a nice sky blue, and then we're going to have red on the top of his body. And you'll see the fabric and stuff that I'm trying to match once we get to the sewing. But the fabric that I'm going to be using for his body does have leopard spots in it, so I am going to be adding some spots to the red portion of his face. And I'm also going to go over his beak on the front of his face, and I'm going to try and match the colors that we have on our tusks. So I'm going to go over it with some grays and a little bit of gold that we used on the tusks as well to kind of yellow it. And then after I get all my details in place and I've let my paint dry, I just need to clean up any paint that I've gotten on my glass eyes, and then I'm going to end up resining over this. So I'm going to paint over this with resin first, and then we'll resin in the tusks. And then for the claws that we're going to use on the wings and the feet, I have 14 of them. So the back feet are going to have 5 each, and each wing is going to have 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to primer them first with that blue that we have for the underbelly, except I've lightened it up just a little bit. So I'm going to get everything completely covered in blue, and then I'm going to paint the claw itself a black. So pretty simple. We'll also be resining over these as well. Okay, so all of our clay and resin pieces are done, and now we need to start on the sewing. So here is the pattern that I have, and it's very weird looking and lengthy, but it'll make more sense once we get the body together. So I've got the main body, the arm portion of the wings, the back legs, all the toes, and then the wing itself. And of course a piece for the belly as well. So these are all the fabric pieces that I'm going to be using for the body that had the leopard print. The only thing is, I don't want this white. I want to add a blue. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be dyeing these fabric pieces real quick. So I have everything laid out on some plastic so I don't ruin my countertops, and I'm just going to spray them with some watered down acrylic that I have in a squirt bottle. And I'm just going to add it to where I want the paint to be. I'm going to try and not get it on the red too much. I'm going to kind of blend it a little bit so it will turn a tiny bit purple, but I don't want all of the red to turn purple. And then once all of that has dried, we can start sewing our pieces together. So I'm going to start with the sides of the body, and I'm going to work on the back legs. So I'm going to take the inside portion of the back legs, and I'm going to be sewing down the fronts of them, adding the pieces of fabric together. And then for the tail, I have 2 side pieces for that, and I want to add a little bit of blue fur fabric to the end of it. So I'm going to sew that in place, and then we can take our tail pieces and sew them to the end of our body pieces. For the belly, I'm going to have the blue fabric as well, and I'm going to connect the 2 sides of the body to each side of the belly piece. So I'm going to be basically making one solid piece for the body now. And then for the arm portion of the wing, I'm going to pin both sides of these together and we're going to sew around them, mainly the front portion and around the toes, leaving the ends of the toes open. For the webbing of the wing, I have a side piece for each one, and one of the side pieces I ended up doing a dye job as well. I wanted to have a bit of a brighter blue. The other side is going to be a bit more toned down. So I'm going to take both of these, pin them together, and sew all the way around, leaving the base and top open so we can flip it right side out. For the back feet, I'm going to be using that same toned down blue that we have on the wings to make the toes. And I'm going to actually have the back toes posable. So I have this spread out shape for all 5 of the toes, and I'm going to sew around them. Similar to the fingers on the wings, I'm going to leave the ends of the toes open. Once we have everything sewn, we can cut away our excess fabric and then flip everything right side out and stuff the toes. Now at this point we need our wire frame, and I had to do a lot of reinforcing because the neck is so long and it's kind of giraffe shaped where it just kind of goes straight up. So I had to add a bunch of extra wires just to make sure that it could hold its head up. Now normally I work on the body first and then add the limbs to the body, but this time around I'm going to start with the wings. So I have the arm portion of the fabric for each wing, and what we're going to do is we're going to run these over the wires for the wings. Then we're going to take the claws for each finger and we're going to be gluing it to the end of those wires. We can then take the fabric for each finger and glue it around the base of the claw. You'll want to let that dry a little bit, and then I'm going to start stuffing each toe. Now we're going to take the webbing of the wing and we're going to be sewing up the arm, and while we're sewing up the arm we're going to sew the webbing of the wing in place as we go. We're also going to be stuffing the arm too. Once we have both wings done, we can then take the fabric for the body and we can run it over the wire frame. So I'm going to sew the wings in place on the sides of the body, and then we can take our clay head and add it to the wire for the neck and start gluing the fabric around the base of the head. Once that's done, we're going to end up stuffing and closing up the entire body. And then lastly, we need to add our posable feet to the back legs. So I'm going to add those to the wire frame and then start sewing and closing up the back legs. If you're interested in how I make my posable feet, I do have another tutorial on my channel. I'll leave a link down below if you guys want to check that out. Okay guys, and here is our painted Tusk dragon. I had so much fun with it. I'm really glad that the horns came out, or the tusks, my bad. They came out nice and matte and I didn't have to glaze over them to protect them. It was just an interesting thing that I tried out and I'm really happy with it, and hopefully we can do that some more with the clay. Also really glad the fabric dyed so well. I just love this fabric. But anyways, I'm going to have the Tusk Dragon on my website, so I'll have the links down below for that if you guys want to give them a new home. Also, I've got a bunch of other creatures that are still looking for homes, so you can check that out. And then if you guys are interested in trying to make your own art dolls and following along with a video or something and you just don't know what art supplies to use, I have a bunch of art supplies linked down below that you can check out, even if you're just curious to see what I'm using and how much it usually costs or something like that. Now these are affiliated links, so if you do buy anything through them, it does help support the channel. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, to all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!